9 o'clock in the morning, too early for a burger and fries. Well, kids at some schools in Florida are now being served lunch when a lot of people are just starting to think about breakfast. NBC's Kerry Sanders is in Fort Myers, Florida, with more on this. Kerry, good morning.
Well, good morning, Ann. Consider right now there are lots of parents rushing around the kitchen trying to get their children some breakfast, get them off to school. While at some schools in Florida, the kids are already in the classroom and will be heading to the cafeteria for lunch in about an hour from now.
3 hours, 10:30.
Florida ninth grader Aiden Mullen is your typical teen dealing with the challenges of school.
I have some makeup for you, actually.
Adding to his struggles this year is an unconventional early lunch. For Mullen and other students at Winter Park Ninth Grade Center, his lunch on some days starts as early as 9:30 in the morning.
I think that they could, definitely make it so that, we have lunch later in the day and not at breakfast time.
When I was growing up, we never heard of such a thing, a lunch hour that would start at 9:30 or even 10:30.
School officials say the early lunch is needed because this generation of students starts its days so much earlier. Classes begin just after 7 in the morning.
Our students start getting on the bus at 5:30 until about 6:40. So it's actually over 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours before some of them eat.
And Winter Park is not the only school serving lunch before some have eaten breakfast. Even though there is a federal mandate that schools serve lunch between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., this year in Florida alone, at least 60 schools have been granted waivers to start lunch between 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning. While a Penn State study from 5 years ago linked early school lunches to unhealthy eating, county nutritionists believe they have the students' best interests in mind.
As a nutritionist, you have to work around people's schedules. So we know that they're up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. They may or may not have breakfast. And so if they're eating at 10 o'clock, that may be the first meal of the day.
Because he's a diabetic and takes medication on 12-hour intervals, Aiden is allowed to eat lunch in between classes closer to the noon hour. But he still joins his friends in the cafeteria as they eat their hamburgers and corn dogs at a time when most are still eating cereal.
Definitely all my friends are complaining about having to eat at breakfast time. It shouldn't be like that.
And so it's not only early lunches, but it's also early breakfasts. Some of the schools begin serving those breakfasts at 6:30 in the morning. And I think you keep these hours. Don't you have lunch pretty early in the day yourself?
The time works for me, but I'm another story. Kerry Sanders, thank you so much for that report.